All right, we will get started now. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Connecticut Technology podcast. Today, my name is Darren DiMartino. I'll be your moderator. I am the managing partner of ATC. And the focus of today is the cloud journey and the ecosystem, and some tips on how to get started, as well as pointing out some funding options available from our hyperscalers that are out in the marketplace. Today, joining us, we have Bill Franklin. He's a senior director of engineering and sales for Avant. He's been in the industry for quite a numerous years and specialist in infrastructure, and works with IT professionals all over the country to make informed decisions about their roadmap, including data center, infrastructure, hyperscale, security, SD-WAN, and communications needs. Also joining us is the co-founder of eCloud Managed Solutions. His name is Eric Sanders, and Eric has had a long career in IT, again, working in the infrastructure, project management, software development, and operations area, as well as public cloud. Eric speaks on numerous boards and is an expert industry panelist as well. So I'd like to thank them for joining us. And the topic, as we mentioned today, is the cloud journey. And in talking about digital transformation in the cloud, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the start of it. And I guess when we talk about digital transformation and the journey, Bill or Eric, maybe you can talk a little bit about why it's become such a hot topic in our industry today.
Well, I'll take this kind of quote slide, if you will, but what we've seen is not just the evolution of the hyperscalers and quote unquote getting out of the data center business. That envelops a whole different IT orchestration, IT management, and IT tools. The people, process, and technology is changing. And if you're not prepared for that, you're going to get a lot of challenges, whether that's what happened in 2020 with just making IT operations okay. I need to get people collaborating, unified communications, desktops. I mean, whole host of challenges happened in 2020. And now the reason why I included this is organizations, CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, everybody's looking to get their hands wrapped around what are our top challenges and what are we looking to do going forward now that we know business has changed. And in that, I'm one of the first people I get to talk to customers a lot of where your top challenges, and this is a Gartner poll from 500 other executives out there, and they said security operations, right? Your threat landscape, your users are clicking on everything. I don't know what's on my network. I don't know sometimes where my data sets are at, whether they're in the cloud, on-prem. I need to get my hands wrapped around operations. And you can see a whole host of other things. And yes, cloud platforms is one of the major criteria, whether you want a flat operational expense or there's other subject matter reasons to go there. But this is where I'd like to kind of just start broad-based, right? And then drill into some of the reasoning behind it. But I mean, we know what happened the last year has just disrupted everything. And so where is everybody kind of quote unquote at? I'm all ears with that. I just kind of throw up an industry standard, right?
All right. Thanks, Bill. Eric, do you have any comments you'd like to add to that?
I think the one thing when you look at this slide too, I think when you look at the analytics aspect and the platform piece, I think everyone's heard the term data is the new oil. What are you doing with it? Where is it? How disparate is it? Have you centralized it and built a data warehouse? And then looking at the different tools. Now that you have the data, what do you need to use to make it actionable? So I think that's another area that I think we saw a lot of changes, manifest from 2020, especially, and looking into the future.
Great. The next question I had, basically, you guys have helped hundreds of clients between you in this journey. Can you talk a little bit or elaborate maybe on some of the business drivers? Why are the C-suite, what is so important for them to move from legacy on-prem to the cloud? Or even we're hearing a lot about hybrid solutions. Maybe you can share some of the reasons why the clients you're working with are so excited to move towards the cloud.
Well, I'll start on this one just from, there's a whole host of reasons to accomplish this. And this is where Eric's a big fan. I'm a big fan of why Why are we doing this? And making it a decision criteria ahead of time. And this can come from business challenges. I can't scale. My competition is beating me, to my capital expenditures are way too high. I need to OpEx them. There's a myriad of reasons out there, and we try and get in front of them to help with this. Now, I would say Eric's an expert on the digital transformation when it comes to infrastructure. A lot of times that does envelop the network side of things, or cybersecurity, or X, whereas that might be the landing spot, but we need to put in place the mechanisms for success. And as we know, work from home has really disrupted a lot of things, from corporate real estate to headquarters to branch offices. And what is my workforce going to look like? What is my culture going to look like? There's a whole host of things we have to worry about. And that last one I love is, I can't slow down the board in the mergers and acquisitions. We have to operationalize it incredibly well, standardize it, secure it, get these new organizations on my network much, much faster. That's where we get into those SD-WAN, SASE, and as Eric and I talk about all day, is it an express route, a direct route? How are we going to get the data there? There's a ton of challenges in getting to the digital transformation journey. We just are along for the ride and giving strategic advice. So I'll let you kind of give your purview, Eric, because I know that's what makes me and him on some of these podcasts incredibly effective, because I get to see it from my purview and he gets to see it from his.
I think I'll just add to, Bill's earlier question. And we do like to ask that question, why? And I think 2020 really manifested, some businesses really thrived and they needed additional compute, storage, additional network to be able to keep up. And of course, some didn't, right? Now you have a business that's kind of struggling. They're stuck in a data center. They don't have 30, 40, 50% capacity available. Now they have 80 or 90%. I think innovation is one of those key areas that, when you look at what are the business drivers for 2021 to the cloud, I think it's, innovation, scale and flexibility, up or down, time to market, of course. And then, in this day and age with e-commerce, you can go global. The moment I move on to AWS or Azure, I'm a global organization now, and I can transact in, every edge of the globe. So those are some key areas. I think, again, back to the why, if you're going to gain value from the cloud, but your IT environment has to be agile. And they have to become agile if they're not. In my opinion, with this business transformation, I think one of the questions is, why hasn't somebody done this already? My thought is there's two factors, right? People and culture. If you have companies that in your space that are beating you, or more innovative, or seem to be more innovative, they probably made this leap 2, 3, 4 years ago. If you're still in a data center and you're still trying to figure out, how do I do digital transformation? Of course, let's be honest, you're behind. And two of those factors could be people and culture within your organization. And that's just something from an executive standpoint, whether it's the board, senior leadership, C-suite, someone needs to ask that question to figure out, what do we need to do to get by that?
And Eric, in that, I'm asking the same why. What are 2 or 3 other questions you always ask? It sounded like you were getting into are other business drivers being agile? Are other business drivers X, right? So what are, in your purview, some of those ones you've been documenting year over year?
Of course, scale, flexibility, high availability, being able to, when this work from home, be able to make sure that people are able to access the business applications that they need to be effective, whether they're in an office or not. Security and costs, those are the 2 biggest things we typically have to talk about. How am I going to secure this environment in the cloud and secure my users from home as they're accessing a home internet and getting into my corporate domain? Those are things that we see. And then, of course, the big money ball question, how can I do this cost effectively, where this isn't going to be 10, 20, 30% more than what I'm already paying today?
Are people now coming back to you and saying it is 20, 30%, if not more, help me, because they moved there too quickly in the year of 2020, right? Get out of the data center business. We need to be up in the cloud, and it got accelerated, but it wasn't properly architected.
Not only properly architected, they don't have the system and controls around the control who's spinning up these resources and adding additional costs. And I think we'll talk about it later around a cloud center of excellence and that journey If you do move to a cloud-first organization or approach, and you are doing the digital transformation, how do I put process and controls around that to make sure my costs don't go through the roof? This is, it's kind of funny how technology kind of cycles itself. This is back when we went from, hey, I need a blade server for every application, to when we went to VMware. Now everything was virtualized, and what's the term we heard for years? VM sprawl. That's the same thing. It's just not in your data center now. That VM sprawl is now in AWS, Azure, Google, wherever it may be. So again, how do you put controls around that to control your costs?
And maybe Eric or Bill, we talk to a lot of developers and even IT executives. A lot of times the corporate environment doesn't allow these developers to act as quick as they need. So they choose to go around the system. And that's where you get what's called shadow IT. And all of a sudden there's a bill that's $25,000 a month that nobody even knew was out there. But it was a developer that took his credit card out and started out when it was going to be a small application, something takes off. And before you know it, it's out of control.
Well, and I've seen this market evolve. Now they're trying to bring in ITSMs to be able to access anybody asking for resources. And Eric too, we have to put controls around it. You can't just go and do that, right? And there has to be detriment, but everything. I've even seen ServiceNow as a service. People are developing that platform. So when you plug into that platform, then you can go into AWS, Azure, GCP, like you said. So having a strong, controlled environment to be able to regulate that is so imperative. You're not going to slow down the business. You just have to make sure that what are the reasons why you're asking for all this development, and then tie that cost back to X. And that's imperative. You can't go one way like that sprawl and developers and not come back to the table like, wow, well, why did he spend thousands of dollars? What is it tied to? What's the business value? I've seen that evolve the last year. It's been amazing.
Yeah, and then add to that, I mean, you see the shadow IT. Where we've seen it a lot too is on the sales and marketing side, right? Where they're trying to go to IT, they're trying to get resources, and typically, what do they get? They're typically just getting pushback. And of course, sales and marketing, they have their own budgets. So what do? They go hire somebody and they start spinning up things. They start working around IT because at the end of the day, they have something to report to. They have things and metrics that they're measured on. And of course, a lot of times it's moving the revenue needle. How do I do that if my biggest blocker is internal IT?
All right, great. Next question that we have, and let me move the slides forward. Most people are familiar with the hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, and Google, but there's a whole ecosystem of companies that are either helping people move to the cloud or the cloud providers themselves or the hyperscalers. Can you guys give an education or give an overview of that system and how it can work together to help people make this migration or this journey to the cloud?
Sure. So I'll start off. I mean, there's not, like a regular data center, there's not one provider or one manufacturer that can do everything for you. And of course, that's the same in the cloud. With the native services that, let's just say AWS has, there are just certain things they're not really good at, right? I'll pick on AWS a little bit. Snapshots are good, backups are okay, but a lot of people that come to us want to make sure that their snapshots and backups are outside of AWS. Yeah. Not every company, but there are a few companies that got a little concerned when some of the hyperscalers and other started shutting down a particular platform that was out there. We're like, all right, what if they don't like what I do? What are the terms of service now that I have to adhere to, now that I've seen them basically put somebody out of business? So, those are things that we end up talking about. Network is definitely one of them. Aviatrix, Alkira are great from that to be able to do multi-cloud. And most customers that we talk to, they go, oh, it's their first journey to the cloud. Well, they're already on Office 365. They're already using Salesforce. They might be using Dropbox.
They're already there.
They're already there. You're just not there from a data center standpoint yet. So we'll help you with that. Cohesity is one we really like, with helping with ransomware, backups outside the cloud, data management as a service. So there's a bunch of things that we like about them that really fit into this ecosystem. And then all the other typical players, Sophos, Palo Alto, Cisco, they all have finally caught up to, I need to virtualize my ASA and put it in the AWS marketplace or Azure, wherever that may be. And then some other security providers that we like. Arctic Wolf is one, Alert Logic. So there's some great SIM that can not only integrate things that you may have on-prem from a hybrid, or the things that you're doing in, say, AWS or Azure. So yeah, there's a really good marketplace out there again, but you got to figure out what native services you really want to use on that platform and have a partner to really help educate you that. And then say, you know what, this isn't the best service. We should go to the marketplace and try to find something else.
And that can't be emphasized enough, because what Eric just said was, you see the slide. I hate slides that put up 1,000 logos, right? They're confusing. They're confusing to your IT organizations and your strategy. What we need to do is focus in on the business drivers. Where are we at in this process, and help enable it? And there's a whole host of people out there that will say yes, but this market is confusing. We need to dial that into making some strategic, MSP, full-time employees, people, culture, and processes. It just, I see these all the time, and I'm like, I just confuse everybody that way, right? Because what you just said, Eric, some people know those technology partners, some people don't. And me and you are knee deep in them. We have to be, because we're more solution architecting for the business value. And that's where I love and I hate these slides,
Well, the next question, as the two of you have worked with hundreds of clients through this process, maybe it would be great to share some of the attributes that lead to a positive outcome, as well as maybe some pitfalls that you observed that prevented a positive outcome, and what somebody could have done to fix that and turn it into a positive outcome.
Let me just quickly start, because this is Eric's passion, this cloud transformation lifecycle management. But the assess is not just on the infrastructure side, which you should absolutely do. I'm a legacy NetApp vCenter server admin for many, many years, and everyone's just tying, a LUN to a VM. Great. But when you get into the cloud, you have to understand interdependencies, and you have to understand the assessment of what's the business value to taking this workload and moving it to another platform. What is it, right? That's why Eric and I just like, well, why are we doing it, right? I've seen this also on now security, unified communications, collaboration, and all those other mechanisms, because when we talk about digital transformation, it isn't just one thing, right? It's an enveloping organizational culture change. So keep that in mind, that we're seeing that on a grander scale, security, unified communications, collaboration, all those other ones outside of the infrastructure, which I would say Eric is one of the biggest experts when it comes to this. And then also, I think on this slide, you can touch on the funding aspect of it, Eric. I think that's a very creative way to helping organizations understand, is cloud a very viable transition for me?
Yeah, and if you look under the access in the third box, one of those things, the skills-based assessment we want to do during the assessment phase, just to get an idea of where is the skill set of the team, because part of that assessment is we're looking at, what we believe based on your current environment, what your AWS, Azure, or Google pricing would be. We will compare the three. We have a weighted matrix that we've developed to help you really weight these 18 different critical areas that we've built over time that will force you to think through, do I want to go AWS? Do I want to go Azure? Do I want to go Google? The other reason why we do this is, let's be honest, the Monday morning quarterback. Somebody's going to come in a year or two later, a new CIO, CTO, whoever, go, Darren, why did you go to AWS? Why didn't you go Azure? Well, at the time, here's the assessment information we had. Here's the weighted matrix. Here's the pricing. We give you all of that to be able to have this not only make the decision easier for you, but also to make it defendable in case you have to bring this up a year or two later to say, hey, John, why'd you go to Azure? I mean, didn't you know AWS is 10 years in a row, leader in the Magic Quadrant? The other thing, is from a funding standpoint, Bill was alluding to that. Your partner is going to be able to get you that. Typically, customers aren't able to get funding on their own. They got to go to a partner who is at a certain tier of competency They have certain technology competencies that they need. They got to know the different programs that are available. It would be impossible to expect a client to go into Amazon and go, hey, let's talk about MAP, Migration Assistance Program, or Migration Acceleration Program, and tell you the kind of money that's available out there. You're going to get 25% typically of whatever your annual spend is. So just to give you the quick math, if you're spending 100 grand annually in AWS, I know I can get you 25,000. And I know this is recording, I will still be able to get you 25,000. So what are the different tools that are out there? You know, we help people migrate to and from anywhere. Of course, I've done VMware to AWS. I've helped people go from Google to AWS, Rackspace Liquid Web to Azure. I mean, we've moved people all over the place. And then how do I not just lift and shift, but how do I, what we call lift and evolve, or lift and optimize? So if I'm at, it would be foolish of me to take an environment that say has 50% capacity and just lift it and shift it and move to the cloud, because I'm probably wasting at least 30 or 40%. Let me right size that as we get over. We've talked to customers who want to get away from Microsoft. So how do I get away from Microsoft licensing? Great, we'll move you to a NoSQL or PostgreSQL database, move you to a managed service within that cloud platform, or move you to managed SQL on Azure. Again, you don't have to pay.
Eric, what is are you a CSP? Is that a Microsoft CSP, a cloud service provider? You know, because customers invariably, like you said, Microsoft's a pain in the butt to deal with from a licensing perspective. So can you help, whether it's buying a consumption model through AWS Marketplace or just yourself kind of cleaning it up? And there's a whole host of Microsoft CSPs out there that do this, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're you know, AWS Advanced Tier, Microsoft Workload Competency, Azure CSP, Google Partner, and of course we got other hyperscale partnerships that we have. Yes, in helping you with that license transformation.
That's
a lot of people don't know that I think 57% of all Microsoft workloads that run in the public cloud run on Amazon, versus 35% on Azure. And what's interesting about that is that we have licensings and tools that we can look at. If you're a completely Microsoft shop and you're in a data center today, what does that licensing transformation look like in AWS? What does it also look like in Azure? And be able to do that comparison, because I'll be honest with you, this is difficult. This is that cloud 2.0, 3.0 type skill set. This isn't, hey, I just opened up an account in AWS or Azure and I'm going to figure this out. We've seen customers that do that. And I think the other thing you got to look at is, with a partnership, is what's that flexible model? Like, we've had customers that come to us and we do everything. We have a fintech company out of New Jersey. They go, you know what? We did that with our last MSP. We don't want to do that. We really want to learn this. Great. Let us do a block of hours and we're going to be your trusted advisor. We're going to be your lifeguard as you start building things out in AWS to make sure you're doing it amongst best practices. Of course, go do it. You're going to trip, you're going to fall, but great. You're learning as you're going along, but you have a trusted expert behind you to be able to say, you know what, Bill, you can use a CloudFormation script to be able to do that much easier than you pointing and clicking and building out the infrastructure on AWS. Those are the things that a partner is really going to help guide you on. But again, you know, it's like any partnership. You got to figure out what's important to you and to make sure that marriage is going to be, you know, enjoyable.
Yeah, and Eric, when you're going through the assess and migrate, optimize, and manage, right? These kind of 4 pillars, and I've seen all different types of them out there. Some of them have 6, some of them have 10. You know how, you know, there's a whole list of checks and balances to make sure when you lift and hopefully evolve that it's the right decision. Now, one of our audience members is bringing up a great question, challenging to say the least, right? So when we get into this, there's usually a lot of hands in the cookie jar from decision-making process. It's not just only the CIO or CTO, right? There's usually a lot of other ones. So have you seen kind of a, I don't know, best practices maybe? I'm just kind of throwing it out there from your perspective, right? Because you always ask, and I like this, you need time from the team members at the corporate infrastructure, right? You need their efforts to be in here. And that's a misnomer in the marketplace. If you think you can just go there and everything's almost better, you're teeing yourself up for very, very unsuccessful over an abundance of complications, let's just say, to put it mildly. But have you seen a
I
power
think
structure like decision making? Have you kind of come up with that or seen best practices around there?
around the decision making on where to go and what cloud provider, or decision making on what infrastructure you should be
Internal.
using when you move
I
to
think
cloud.
Jason's asking about
Yeah.
internal
Yeah.
at a corporate IT infrastructure or an organization.
Yeah, that's always tough, right? Because you
Yeah.
start getting into the internal politics. And again, as I stated earlier, the two biggest factors in a lag in cloud transformation is people and culture. I think with anything, I ran into this with a large integrator that I work for, which ultimately prompted me to leave to start eCloud. It's always about facts. I would always present my leadership with, here's what's going on in the field. Here's the impact that we're seeing from a business standpoint. And here are the trends and the facts that are taking us to, where this cloud journey was ultimately going in the cloud train. So I think as long as you're presenting facts and options, you just can't have, well, that's not how we do it. You can't accept that answer of, well, that's just not how we do it here. Because as you saw that logo slide that we had earlier, I mean, every Fortune 1000 company just about has some level of a cloud strategy or operating in some cloud today. So if you're not there and you're dealing with the power struggles internally, again, my recommendation would be facts, 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 and just all the benefits of why people are moving to the cloud: time to market, innovation, reliability, scalability. You have more options in innovation that they do in 6 months than you would ever do in a lifetime within your own shop. That's the
Eric,
big thing that I see, because I mean, they're rolling out, AI and ML. Most organizations aren't ready for AI and ML.
No.
And guess what? All the cloud providers had that for at least 3-5+ years. And only a smidgen of customers really take advantage of AI and ML. Of course, where do you see it? Manufacturing. If you're a fintech, do you really need AI and ML? Actually, you do. But where do you apply that?
Yeah, and I've seen it the exact same model, and that's where we do the assessment, we do TCOs, we do business impact analyses, because you'll always have a lot of times the naysayer of, it's not secure, it's not for us, it's not our culture, going to your point of, it's not what we've done. And only through a more impact analysis or showing somebody that can be more secure, network better, and giving better access, just what you said, the pinnacles of what a business is always trying to do, that very rarely do they ever get there. And it's a journey, we all know it. But that's a tricky perspective, because I've dealt with more procurement people now sometimes on these journeys, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. They just want to know the financials. And wait, why are you making a business decision when it's just financials? And that is a big struggle for all of us on this, it sounds like.
That's for sure. Sure. At this point, we want to first of all remind everybody that the Tech Talks, the Connecticut Technology Tech Talks, are the first Tuesday of every month at noon. We will be doing one next month on June 1st, most likely taking the summertime off before restarting in September. Moving on with our presentation today, we've talked a little bit about the transformation and how a third-party strategic partner can be of benefit. And we've also talked about the difference between successful outcomes and some outcomes that maybe weren't as successful. And at this point, it might be good to talk a little bit about the responsibilities. If a customer is going to go to the cloud, what is their responsibility? What is the hyperscaler's responsibility? And where do you draw the lines? And this is a big part of, I think, that successful journey or successful transformation, understanding what the roles and responsibilities are and understanding what that hyperscale is going to provide to you. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Yeah,
This is a big misnomer, and I know Eric's passionate about it, but Jason is asking kind of another question, is what can be distributed, what can't be, but it is understanding this layer or this model almost on, I wouldn't say a per workload basis, but on a journey to get to the cloud, is what can be distributed, what can't be. Understanding, are you prepared to handle the top level on an AWS Azure's a little bit different, but it's about the same model, right? I wanted to answer that live for you, Jason, and have Eric elaborate on this criteria, because this is a big misnomer out there of what is my role and responsibility in this public cloud, or customer / full-time employee / MSP. There's a big, I call it a utility company. They're just going to give you power. Well, what do? Well, you got to build the house to make sure the power is distributed to all the lighting and all the fixtures and everything is correct. But that's also why you hire a general contractor, you buy a house that's already pre-built. So to me, this is a big shared responsibility, which envelops why or why not go to the cloud.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think, as you can see, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud. Customers responsible for security in the cloud. Those are the key takeaways. So with the house analogy, AWS builds a house, you define who has access. Do I do a surveillance system? What color paint do I have? And then who has access to the different rooms? And then how everybody gets in. That's really, that in a nutshell. This is where customers get in trouble though. As you start building and configuring things, we have a client, and we've seen this time and time again, where like an AWS S3 storage bucket is publicly available and nobody knows about it.
Ooh.
And next thing you know, you have a publicly available bucket. I mean, this happened to a government agency about 3 years ago as well, with a bunch of HIPAA data that nobody knew. Small bucket, I think there is about, I say small, probably 10 terabytes of data, all HIPAA related data, public agency. Of course, that's bad, right? So that's the piece that, again, based on your skill set and the model that you have, this is where you look at, where can I give AWS or Azure or Google more responsibility with managing those services, like say a serverless solution, a database solution, the actual VM with the operating system, or take it a data analytics, service. These are things that they have built, they're managing, they're doing the OS, they're doing the scaling, everything on the back end. All you have to do is worry about the data and who has access or enabling that service. Security, of course, network, identity access management, and of course the customer data. This is all on your responsibility, which of course, this is the most sensitive stuff. And I don't want to say most complex, but this is where bad things happen. If you don't have a strong process, system, or controls around these areas, this is when you're leaving yourself open.
All right.
One thing to elaborate, that slide that we talked about before, the assess, migrate, manage, optimize, manage, really going through this piece, the assess phase, of course, customer responsibility, be there to answer questions, collaborate, RB tools output, I need that. The migration phase, we'll do the lift and shift in the migration, but really where the customer responsibility falls is, of course, UATing those applications now on that new platform. I don't know your application, of course, better than you do, but those are areas that you're going to need to help us define not only the success criteria, which will help you define, but just being able to UAT those applications and that new environment before we cut it over.
As we're getting to the point where we're going to wrap up, I'll put up this last slide, and Billy already alluded, Eric, I know this is your pride and joy right here. If you can walk through this for people and give them an overview and any closing comments from both of you after that, and then we'll take questions and answers if there's any available. Yeah, so this is really for an all in the cloud type organization or a company. Everyone's saying it today. We're a cloud first organization. Well, that's great. What does that really mean? Now, this should look familiar to a lot of people, right? This is basically the PMBOK, PMO type process, normal development, waterfall type process where I initiate, design, implement, operate, and optimize. But what we do a little differently with this is build a scoping documentation. What's the request or the service that you want in that particular cloud provider? Is there an ROI? Why would I ever ask for an ROI during a scoping session? Because if you tell me the ROI is $10,000 and when I come back and I give you the pricing and it's $100,000,
this thing just died on, on the table and we should be moving on to something else. This is also going to help drive within the Cloud Center of Excellence organization priority. Ultimately, it's going to drive accountability too. So if Bill comes to me and says, hey, I have a project, the ROI is $1 million. And I'm like, great, Bill, it's only cost $50,000. That's great. Let's get this. That's going to go to the top of the list. We're going to get it implemented. But maybe Bill's boss or the CEO is going to go, because this happened to me in a prior organization. Of course, what does the CEO do at the end of the year? Hey, Darren, I'm going to cut your IT budget by 10%. That happens, right? Everybody on this call, we all have that t-shirt. But it's different if I go to Darren and go, wait a minute, Darren, why would you cut my budget by 10%? Look at my ROI. My cost was $1 million and I enabled $10 million. Actually, you should be increasing my budget by 10% because I'm going to give you 100% return on my 10%. What did we just do? We just flipped the table, from an IT standpoint, for those that are in IT, on the business to be able to say, I am actually delivering value. I'm a profit center in IT now, not a cost center. That all starts in that initiation phase. Everything else kind of falls into place after, right? How do I design it? How do we model it? What platform do we need to put it on? How long does it really need to be there? Making sure this aligns to whatever that platform's best practices for, whether it's well architected, whatever that CIS, whatever that may look like. And then how do I continue to optimize and cost optimize that particular solution that we just enabled?
Not a whole lot more needed from me on that one. No. It was perfect. I love the ROI conversation at the beginning because, like you said, instead of a cost center, we're strategically aligned to business, and that has been a struggle over the decades. And now more than ever, you can't be the answer of no, we can't do it because the IT team is not ready. It's how are you going to support it within a time frame because the business is going. That's a completely different one. And if you're enabling that conversation, that means you have to run a cycle of daily checks and balances or quarterly checks and balances, however way you want to initiate that, to make sure we're adhering to it. One thing you brought up there, and you brought it up a couple of times, this is just more my own curiosity. Have you seen more of the industry focused, but data lakes going and trying to drive revenue from data? You said data is the new oil, right? Have you seen now a lot of those purviews where data lakes and now some of those, transformational things, the snowflakes, the X's out there that are coming up more and more because whether you're insurance, whether you're banking, whether you're manufacturing, you want to profit from some of the data or at least be in front of trends. Are you seeing that more and more now, Eric?
Yeah, and you're seeing the hyperscalers really push out more services around data analytics. AWS, for instance, just rolled out, basically they call it Health Lake, a healthcare data lake that has all the HIPAA data controls around it and the encryption and everything else rolled into it. So you're seeing more and more of that. And of course, you're seeing a nice uptick in the marketplace and ecosystem. The Tableaus of the world are getting competition. There's more native services on the platforms, ETLs that extract, transport, load. So I may have, we did this for a healthcare company that was, basically doing a big roll up, 3 different versions of Epic. Of course, a couple different versions of SAP, all these different things. Everything was a different version from each of the different organizations. Well, I need an ETL to be able to get all that data in a centralized data lake and build out that, basically that hub of that wheel where I have all this data around all these different areas. How do I get it into a central place and now have my Power BI or my Tableau platform sitting on top of it to actually now see data analytics across the board? One of the things they were doing was by location, what was profitability, but where were there different services that those other organizations could offer kind of that cross-sell, upsell model, where did they have availability, maybe in radiology in one location versus the other. Instead of saying, hey, we don't have an appointment till next Thursday, hey, if you go down across the street, you can get an appointment tomorrow. So just being able to have that data analytics, again, make better informed decisions for the business.
Great. At this point, I will open up to any questions that we have. If we don't have questions, or while we're waiting for questions, Eric, maybe you can spend a few minutes just elaborating. We talked, and one of the main points was how to get funding to support these transitions. Maybe you can give a little more insight into how that funding, how would someone go about getting funding from one of the hyperscalers if they were going to transfer them from on-prem to the cloud?
Yeah, you gotta find, in the AWS world, it's at least an advanced or premier tier partner. In the Azure world, it's at least silver or gold. Same in the Google world. You gotta find a partner that has at least that tier. If you're talking to a registered select partner, they can't get any funding. Again, I know that from launching eCloud. There are also competencies. So if you're a healthcare organization, having a healthcare competency, we can go get money from the healthcare team to help offset some of those costs. It could be based on SAP, Microsoft workloads, Oracle, Linux, whatever it may be. There's different funding buckets for the different technologies that are available out there. Again, the other thing that this is based on is what your annual spend estimated would be. So those are areas that you would want to be able to look at. The other is how do you, the customer, get that money? So we always typically, there's two ways you get money. You either get it as an offset of the SOW. So in that particular case, I said earlier, if you're going to spend $100,000, I can get 25 grand. Let's say it's going to cost me 50 grand to get you an AWS. Well, you'll see the 50 grand, you'll see the AWS, 25,000. So your net would be 25,000. That should always be transparent to you in that SOW. It's typically it's you can also get platform credits. So a lot of times we've gone back to the hyperscalers and go, hey, Bill wants to move to the cloud, but it's going to take us 3 months based on our timeline. So he's going to incur costs during that time frame. Anything you can do to help offset those costs. A lot of times they'll offset those costs. Because again, they know they're transitioning over, and if I can make it easier for them, great, I can make it easier. So there's typically SOW offset costs and then platform costs. There's also costs based on the services you're going to use. So if you're using the CDN platform of any of these guys, they love that because they love taking out Akamai or any of the other, CenturyLink, CDN, or anybody else. There are credits also based on, or discounts based on the services. So those are things that, again, never expect a client to figure any of this out. Contact a partner. We can help navigate you through that. And again, make sure you understand where you can maximize the most on this cloud transformation, this cloud journey, to really lower that cost out of pocket.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. That was great. First, I'd like to, now that we're at 12:45, we're going to wrap. I want to thank all of the audience participants, the Connecticut Technology Council, most importantly, Eric Sanders with eCloud and Bill Franklin with Avant. We truly appreciate you joining us and sharing your knowledge with our audience. And hopefully all of you will join us next month on June 1st for the next technology talk. Thanks very much and hope everyone has a great day.